Good morning. My name is Keisha Reynolds, and I'm an ambassador with FSP Against Bullying. I was asked to share a little bit about a testimonial on my experience with volunteering for the outreach programs. However, before I do that, I think it's only fair to share with you my story and how I came to FSP. I've only been with FSP for about maybe, I think, a year, maybe something like that. But my journey here extends well before I actually arrived here. You see, when I was 6, I was bullied, much like the community that FSP serves. However, unfortunately for me at that time, there was no FSP. I was bullied unmercifully to the point where I was kicked downstairs at a babysitter's, and at the end, my family was threatened where if they did not move or relocate from the area that we lived in, that I would be killed. At that time, authorities were involved, and the bullying at that point began to subside. All during that while, I was dealing with this as an only child. I had no one to go to except for my mom. And when I would go to her, she naturally would go and talk to the parents of the children who were bullying me. But unfortunately, that didn't prove any good fruit, as nothing was done, and they continued to bully me. In fact, I remember those mornings after those conversations at the bus stop being particularly brutal, because then I was not only verbally taunted, but then also pushed around physically as well, and not by one, but by a group of bullies. At 6, my tormentors were about 3 to 4 years older than me. Now, bullying at any age is terrible, but for someone who is 6 and to have to deal with this from people who are 9 and 10 years old is absolutely terrifying, and not just by one, but in many cases 2 or 3. As my tormentor at that time systematically had the influence to be able to allow and to encourage other children in the neighborhood to bully me. This didn't stop until they literally aged out of elementary school and went into junior high school. So I dealt with this for years. The interesting part is one time I told this story, and the person I was telling it to asked me, well, were you bullied every single day? As if that gives the right to be bullied at all. It shouldn't have happened even one day, let alone the years that I dealt with it. Now, fast forwarding to where we are now, I intentionally sought out FSP. Now, at the time, I didn't know that it was FSP, but I did intentionally look for an organization that did help people going through that. You see, another caveat to this is that throughout all that bullying, I developed a disorder called body focused repetitive behaviors, or BFRBs for short. They are categorized in the DSM-5 under, I believe it's obsessive compulsive disorder, as I don't think they have their own diagnostic verbiage there, but they are classified there. And the reason why is because OCD and body-focused repetitive behaviors, they overlap. There are a lot of similarities, but there are also some differences. With body-focused repetitive behaviors, the pulling is more sensory, and it comprises of trichotillomania. There are many others, but the main ones are trichotillomania, where one pulls their own hair, and the hair can sometimes be pulled from the head, the arm, the eyelashes, eyebrows, and even the pubic area. For me, it centered around the scalp, as well as skin picking and nail biting. When it first started when I was 6, as a result of the bullying, it started for me with the nail biting. but it was pervasive in the sense that I would bite to the point where my nails were down to the nail bed. Because during that time, because all of this happened during the 80s, the term body focused repetitive behavior had not been coined yet. It hadn't even was not developed until the mid 90s. And even when it was developed, at that point I was in my late teens. I'll say probably in the 80s, going into the latter part of the 80s. I was in my late teens going into high school. And one thing about body focused repetitive behaviors, if it's not addressed at that time, it is very common for it to morph into another one and another one. I currently suffer with 3 of them. I still once in a while suffer with the nail biting, with the hair pulling, and with the skin picking, which comes in the form of picking any type of a blemish or a spot or anything like that. On this journey, it took me about 36, 37 years to really come to terms with this. And in doing so, I found hypnotherapy to be my solace in being able to do that, which I'm now currently a certified clinical hypnotherapist. And in doing that work, I had to then address the root cause of where this came from. And that all started with bullying. I then researched and looked for a nonprofit organization to be able to help with. And that brought me to 50 Shades of Purple Against Bullying. And that is my story and how I came here. So the testimonial in terms of the outreach, I did do an outreach where I was there with the LGBTQ community last summer. I believe it was it was a parade in the South Jersey area. But just being here alone amongst people, amongst the community, has been the healing that I've needed. You know, I came here to help others and sharing my story, but in the end, I end up being helped myself by meeting people like Jazz and other members of FSP family. It saddens me that I'm not able to be there to share in this 10th anniversary with all of you. But I have to say, I'm so deeply proud and honored to be a part of it. So Jazz, congratulations on 10 years.